There are certain aspects with regards to the will of God, mysteries, that we will never understand in this life. And one of those mysteries of God's will is going to be Jesus Christ proposing a gospel. And you can have two individuals. One will hear the words of Jesus Christ, and it will produce faith in his heart and draw him back to the Lord by love. Another can hear the exact same words, but rather than produce faith, his heart is hardened, and he turns and continues on his way. There is one thing I think we need to be clear about on the outset as we examine today's gospel, is that as we see Jesus Christ praising his Father, he is not rejoicing because some are hard of heart and will not receive his words. Far from it. Because we will see later Christ pausing to take in a view of Jerusalem, and he would weep over it, lamenting their lack of faith. But what is it that Jesus Christ is revealing that lays hidden from those who consider themselves intelligent and wise with regards to the operations of this world? And the Lord gives us just a brief peek. We see him talking about God in terms of relationships. And so here he is praising his Father. And then he tells the people who are listening that all things have been given to me by the Father. And no one knows who the Father is except the Son. And no one knows the Son except the Father. And so we begin to see, the doctrine of the Blessed Trinity begin to emerge in the preaching of Jesus Christ. Now, the fathers of the church will say just because Christ is only referring to himself and the Father does not mean that he is not including the Holy Spirit. Because that's implied, because wherever you have a relationship with a father and a son, what is implied is the mutual bond of love that exists between the two, the Holy Spirit. And so what Jesus Christ is revealing is that God is a trinity of persons who enjoy a communion of love. And part of the gospel is the revelation of this truth, who God truly is and who we are in relation to him. Why were we created in the first place? We were created to eventually one day be drawn into and enjoy the blessedness of the life of the Holy Trinity. To share in their life, their love, and experience their joy. God is a communion of persons, and we were created to be a part of that communion. But then we look at this God who is revealing himself, and he doesn't force anyone to accept his invitation, does he? To enter into that communion of love with the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. There is no force, there is no compulsion. Isn't it funny, there is something interesting about human nature, and I know you already know this, just from your, knowledge of, politics and how all this stuff works, is that for some reason we have a tendency to slouch toward tyranny. We like to be bossed around and told what to do. There are some people who despise their freedom. They despise freedom. Just tell me what to do so I don't have to think about it. Being free and having to make all these choices is exhausting. Somebody relieve me. But see, not God. Because our freedom is required to respond with love, given the love behind the invitation. And so Jesus Christ says, come to me. Come to me. But he addresses it specifically to all who labor and are burdened. Now, I'd suggest to you that excludes no one, because we all labor and are burdened. But what does Christ mean specifically about those who labor and are burdened? Well, it has to do with the most fundamental of all human desires. It is our desire for happiness. St. Thomas Aquinas says it unequivocally, that all people desire happiness. There are no exceptions. But this is where things go off the rails, so to speak. Is that whether or not we are actually cognizant of the fact that we are driven by this desire for happiness, it doesn't really make any difference. Where it goes off the rails is that we think we can find happiness and satisfaction and pleasure in the things that God has created rather than God himself who created them for our use. For our use. The other day, I was thinking about this because I kind of got a chuckle out of it. I saw this sign for a garage sale, and it was quite clever. I like clever people and people who say and do clever things. And this sign said garage sale, and underneath it says, "My junk can be your junk." You might as well tell the truth. Right? I mean, just tell the truth. But of course, it kind of set me off thinking, And it was like, all of that stuff that's spread out on the tables on that person's, front yard, were all things that at one time that person thought were precious. Precious. When they bought that thing, yes, there was this joy and a momentary sense of satisfaction. But what happened to the happiness and the satisfaction that now has made that person despise the things they own and once considered to be precious, that they now call it junk? Junk. You see, it's very instructive, isn't it? And even though we know that we cannot find happiness and satisfaction and pleasure in created things, we still chase after them over and over and over and over again. But then, what about the people who are attracted to the garage sale? To intentionally buy something that another person considers to be junk. My junk can become your junk. And if that junk never brought that person lasting happiness and satisfaction, what makes you think the result will be different if you buy it? See, this is what Jesus Christ is talking about. All we who are laboring and are burdened. And Christ gives us the solution for the satisfaction of our desire for happiness that drives and motivates us. I will give you rest. It is I myself, I, Jesus Christ, will give you the satisfaction you desire and that you long for. So we turn back to our friend St. Augustine, who understood this truth very well. You have created us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. Only the God who created our heart for himself can put it at rest and give it peace. Everything else is an exercise in complete and total futility. And we know that. But look at this astonishing thing Jesus Christ says following upon his very generous invitation. He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." Take my yoke. I can imagine that a lot of people, when they hear these words, automatically imagine that he is referring to his cross. But I can assure you that Jesus knows the difference between a cross and a yoke. He's not afraid to talk about the cross and our relationship to it as his disciples. But this is not one of those instances. He says yoke. And that's exactly what he means. And we all know what a yoke is for. You want to go out and plow your field, and it's going to require 2 oxen. If you don't want them to go off in different directions, you have to yoke them together so that in tandem, accompanying each other, they plow the field. And so what is Jesus Christ saying? Yoke yourself to me as a friend and a companion, and we will walk side by side together and plow this field, to further extend the analogy. Isn't that one of the most comforting and consoling thing that you've heard in a really, really long time? That we are not alone. That it is Jesus Christ who yokes himself to us, we are yoked to him. And in a friendship of camaraderie, in pursuit of our supernatural destiny for which we were created, Christ will keep pace with us at every single step of the way. That's glorious. And learn from me. So he's presenting himself as a model to be imitated. As a model to be imitated. You see, in this very same gospel, Jesus Christ had already began revealing something about the inner life of the Blessed Trinity. That's one of the reasons why Jesus Christ became man, was to reveal God to us, and he just did that. But see, now he's revealing another motive for his incarnation, and that's what it is, to teach us what it means to be authentically human. What does it mean to be authentically human? Jesus Christ teaches, and instructs us. It's not just about a body of doctrine, although it includes that, but it has to do with the very concrete way in which he lived his human life. And so what he wants us to learn is the meekness and the humility of his heart. You see, there we are again with the two great commandments. Sure, we're considering them under different aspects, in this case the aspect of virtue, meekness and humility, but it's still the same way of saying to love God above all things and to love our neighbor as ourselves. Because meekness has everything to do with how we relate to one another. That's what ought to govern our relations with one another. And you look at the entire life of Jesus Christ and his public ministry, and you see the way in which he dealt with others, including his enemies. And he treated everyone without exception with utmost dignity and respect. Who would do that? Considering his enemies. Jesus would. Jesus did. And he wants us to take that instruction to heart and practice the meekness that he himself demonstrated, particularly in his own passion. And humility, of course, has everything to do with the truth. Well, in this case, it's the truth about ourselves. It's the truth about God. We're not God. We're the creature. God didn't have to create us, but he did. He created us out of love. He has always known us. And because he knows us, he loved us. And because he loved us, he created us. We owe him everything. Our entire life belongs to him. But he's not going to demand it. He's not going to demand it. Because it needs to be given back to him with love. With the same love with which he extended the invitation to come and follow me. Take my yoke upon you and learn. This week, take some time with this gospel and open your heart to listen to the invitation of Jesus Christ, and more attentively, listen to the love with which that invitation is spoken. And open your heart to it. You see, well, the truth of the matter is that we actually need to open our heart to Jesus Christ every single day. You know, we just can't say, well, you know, I'm baptized, I'm a cradle Catholic, and I go to Mass every Sunday, you know, and call it good. No, that's not good. That doesn't cut it. We're lazy. We're forgetful. We don't listen. We're obtuse. Every single day we have to open our heart to Jesus Christ and listen to his invitation. But in order to put ourselves in a position to truly hear that invitation as if for the first time, we need that solitude and that silence, because we need to go way deep down into our very interior where that desire for happiness rests. And considering the restlessness of our heart, to open our heart to hear Jesus Christ speak those words to that place and respond to him as generously and with the same love with which he generously extends that invitation and the love with which it is spoken.